The most painful executions in history, they all happened in one place, medieval Europe. And trust me, they got creative. Let me set the scene. It's the year 12-something. You don't know the exact date because you can't read, and neither can anyone you've ever met. Life is simple. You wake up, you farm a turnip, you fear God, you go to bed, and on a good day, a really good day, nobody accuses you of witchcraft. Because here's the thing about the medieval justice system. It had two settings. You're free to go. And something so creatively horrible that it took 4 separate craftsmen to build the equipment. There was no middle option. There was no community service. There was no, we'll let you off with a warning. There was just a very cheerful crowd, a man in a hood, and the worst afternoon of your entire life. Welcome to medieval justice. Please keep your arms and legs inside the cart at all times, while you still have them. Now, before we begin the tour, one thing you have to understand, these executions weren't hidden away. They weren't done quietly behind a barn. They were entertainment. The town square was the theater. The executioner was the star. And admission was free because nothing brought a medieval village together like watching Gary from 3 huts over finally get what was coming to him. So, let's meet the contestants. Our first stop, the stocks. And honestly, if you got the stocks, congratulations. You won. This is the medieval equivalent of a parking ticket. They lock your hands and head in a wooden board, stand you up in the square, and let the townsfolk throw rotten vegetables at you for a couple of days. Humiliating? Absolutely. Painful? Only if someone had a really good throwing arm and a spare cabbage. But you lived. You walked away smelling like a compost heap. But you walked away. Hold on to that feeling, because it is all downhill from here, partner. Next up, the pillory's angrier cousin. Flogging. Simple concept. A whip. You're back, and a man being paid by the strike who did not skip arm day. The Romans loved it, the medieval world kept it, and the general idea was to make an example out of you without the paperwork of an actual execution. Because yes, even in the Middle Ages, killing someone came with paperwork. Somewhere in a candle-lit room, there was a very tired monk writing, and then we got rid of Stephen in beautiful, elegant calligraphy. Now here's where the tour gets, let's call it spicy. Let me introduce you to a device so beloved by history that its name became a whole vibe, the rack. The concept is elegant in the way that a horror is elegant. You lie down. They tie your wrists to one end, your ankles to the other. And then they turn a wheel. Slowly. The whole point wasn't speed. It was time. It was the anticipation. The medieval executioner understood something modern horror directors would spend centuries trying to relearn, that the scariest part is always the part before. And the rack had a second job, which was extracting confessions. And, boy, did it work. Historians will tell you that under enough encouragement, people on the rack confessed to everything. Crimes they did commit, crimes they didn't. Crimes that hadn't happened yet. One good afternoon on the rack, and suddenly you're admitting to weather patterns. Yes, I caused the bad harvest and the fog. The fog was me, because medieval justice wasn't really about truth. It was about closure and a good crowd. Moving along the tour, please mind the buckets. The wheel. Now this one, the breaking wheel, was reserved for when the town really didn't like you. This wasn't a punishment. This was a statement. It was the medieval way of saying, we want you gone, and we want everyone within a 5-mile radius to think very carefully about their life choices. I won't walk you through the mechanics because, frankly, we'd both need a lie down afterward. Just know this. It was public. It was slow. And afterward, they left the wheel up. As a decoration, the way we have billboards, except the billboard was advertising don't. Real estate agents hated it. Lovely 2-hut property, spacious turnip field, wonderful natural light. Please ignore the screaming wheel by the mailbox. Let's keep moving. The next exhibit is a crowd favorite, being drawn and quartered, England's specialty, a method so elaborate it had stages, like a horrifying medieval theme park with the world's worst fast pass. It was reserved for treason, for crimes against the king himself. It was a flair for the dramatic and deeply fragile self-esteem. It involved being dragged through town behind a horse first, as a kind of opening act. You were essentially the parade. Nobody wants to be the parade. And through all of this, remember, there's a crowd, eating snacks, kids on shoulders, someone selling little pies, a grand day out for the whole family. Medieval people did not have Netflix, and it shows. Now let's talk about the one everybody knows, burning at the stake. Usually reserved for heretics and accused witches, the medieval mind believed fire purified the soul. So in their minds, they were doing you a favor. They were helping. And the accusations that got you there? Flimsy doesn't begin to cover it. Your cow died. Witch. You were an old woman who lived alone and minded your own business. Deeply suspicious. Witch. You were left-handed or muttered to yourself, or had a cat with an attitude. Pack your bags, Gertrude. The town has concerns. The whole witch hunt era was basically the world's worst group project, where the grade was somebody's life and half the group didn't even show up with evidence. Okay, deep breath. We're near the end of the tour, and I've saved the strangest for last, because not every terrible medieval fate involved a device. Some just involved nature and patience. There were methods that used exposure, starvation, being locked in a cage and hung above the town gate as a slow public warning. No blade, no fire, just time, weather, and a truly unfortunate view. It was the medieval world's grim reminder that sometimes the cruelest tool available was simply the calendar. And here's the part that should genuinely stick with you when the jokes fade. The most disturbing thing about all of this isn't the creativity. It's the normalcy. To the people watching, this wasn't horror. It was a Tuesday. It was justice. It was weirdly comforting. Proof that the world had order, that wrongdoers were punished, that the powerful were in control. They cheered because it made them feel safe, which is the real lesson hiding under all this medieval madness. It was never really about the pain, the devices, the crowds, the showmanship. It was about power, about making everyone watching quietly promise themselves they'd never, ever end up on that stage. And it worked. For centuries it worked. So the next time you're having a rough day, the Wi-Fi's down, the coffee's cold, someone cut you off in traffic, just remember, you live in an age with due process, comfortable chairs, and a justice system that, at its very worst, will not build a custom wooden device specifically for you. You are, by pure dumb luck of being born now instead of then, living the dream of every peasant who ever nervously eyed that wheel by the road. Congratulations. You survived history's worst timeline by simply not being in it. Now go enjoy your turnip. You've earned it. And if you'd like to keep dodging the wheel by the road, hit that like button. Subscribe for more trips into history's worst timeline, because there's always another terrible chapter, and always another reason to be grateful you weren't there for it. See you next time.